I was sitting in my modest living room, reading the newspaper, when my daughter-in-law Jessica stormed in with a triumphant smirk. She had been building up to this moment for months. "You're just a broke old man, Floyd. Pack your things and leave," she declared with vicious satisfaction, waving eviction papers. "This house belongs to my family now, and so does the warehouse business. You've been nothing but dead weight since Martha died." I looked up calmly from my paper, my weathered hands steady, while Jessica stood there expecting me to crumble. She had no idea what was coming. "Excuse me?" I said quietly, folding my newspaper with deliberate precision. Jessica's eyes gleamed with that cruel satisfaction I had seen building in her for months. "You heard me, Floyd. Derek and I have been talking, and we've decided it's time for you to face reality. You're living in our house, eating our food, and pretending like you still matter. Well, those days are over." I set the paper down on the coffee table that Martha and I had bought 37 years ago at a garage sale in Bakersfield. Back then, we were newlyweds scraping together every penny to build something real. I had started with one small warehouse on the outskirts of town, handling local shipping for farmers and small businesses. Martha worked double shifts at the diner to help cover our first lease payment. Those were the lean years, the years when we ate beans and rice for dinner 4 nights a week, the years when Martha patched my work shirts instead of buying new ones, the years when we dreamed about expansion while counting quarters for gas money. But Martha never complained. She believed in me when I barely believed in myself. Over 4 decades, I built that single warehouse into a logistics empire. 12 facilities across 3 states. Contracts with major retailers and manufacturers. The kind of business that runs itself once you establish the right systems and relationships. But after Martha died 2 years ago from cancer, I couldn't bear staying in our big house alone. Too many memories. Too much silence. So I moved into the modest family home where Derek had grown up, thinking it would be good to be closer to my son and grandson Tommy. I wanted to help with Tommy, maybe teach him about business someday. Derek seemed happy to have me around initially, and Jessica had been sweet as pie during their wedding 5 years earlier. But somewhere along the way, Jessica changed. Or maybe she just stopped pretending. She became obsessed with money, with status, with showing off. She started making comments about my simple lifestyle, wondering why I drove my old pickup truck instead of something more appropriate for a businessman. I never bothered explaining that I preferred simplicity. After losing Martha, material things seemed less important. I deliberately lived modestly, shopped at discount stores, kept my business dealings quiet, let Jessica assume whatever she wanted about my financial situation. It was easier than dealing with her constant questions about money. I thought if I stayed out of her way, we could coexist peacefully for Tommy's sake. How wrong I was. "These are legal documents, Floyd," Jessica continued, waving papers in my face. "Transfer papers for this house. Derek agrees that you're too old and senile to manage anything anymore. We're taking over before you run everything into the ground." My chest tightened. Not from fear, but from the realization that my own son had been part of this deception. Derek, who I had taught to ride a bike in this very driveway. Derek, who had called me crying when Jessica was pregnant with Tommy, so grateful for my support and excited about becoming a father. "Derek agrees to this?" I asked quietly. "Derek suggested it," Jessica said with a nasty laugh. "He's tired of pretending you're still capable of making decisions. Face it, Floyd. You're a broke old man living on charity. We've been supporting you for 2 years, and frankly, we're done. You need professional care." I stared at her perfectly made-up face, her designer clothes, her manicured nails, everything paid for with money she thought belonged to her family now. Jessica had been using my warehouse address for her online boutique business, telling people she ran the family empire. I had allowed it, thinking it was harmless. A young woman wanting to feel important. But this wasn't about feeling important. This was about taking everything I had worked for. "You have 48 hours to pack your things," Jessica announced, heading for the door. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be." After she left, I sat in the quiet house for a long time. Then I went to my bedroom, opened the safe behind Martha's portrait, and pulled out a thick folder of legal documents. Documents that would have surprised Jessica very much. The house was in my name. The warehouses were in my name. Everything was in my name, just as it had been since Martha and I started building our life together. I had never transferred anything to Derek because I wanted to make sure he proved himself worthy first. Apparently, he had already shown me exactly what kind of man he had become. The next morning, I drove to my office early and spent 3 hours going through my files. What I discovered made my stomach turn. The betrayal ran deeper than I had imagined. Derek had been systematically undermining me for months. He had contacted several of my business associates, telling them I was developing dementia and that he needed to take over operations for the good of the company. My longtime accountant, Patricia, had received calls from Derek requesting access to financial statements because Dad is getting confused about his affairs. The worst part was discovering that Jessica had been intercepting my business mail. She had convinced the postal worker that she was helping Floyd manage his correspondence because of his declining mental state. Important documents, financial statements, legal notices, all diverted to her before I ever saw them. I called my neighbor, Mrs. Henderson, who lived across the street. She was 73 and had known Martha and me since we first moved to this neighborhood. "Floyd, honey, I'm so glad you called," she said. "I've been worried about you. Jessica has been telling everyone that you're not doing well mentally. She's been hosting parties in your backyard, introducing herself to guests as the warehouse heiress. Last weekend, she told a whole group of people that she inherited the business from your family and was modernizing it." My hands trembled slightly as I held the phone. "What else has she said, Helen?" "Well, she's been telling people that you're living with them out of necessity because you can't afford your own place anymore. She said Derek is supporting you financially and that you're grateful for their generosity. I didn't believe it for a second, Floyd. You've never been the type to need charity." That afternoon, my business partner and oldest friend, Bill Martinez, called with disturbing news. "Floyd, I need to tell you about Derek's visit last week. He came to my office claiming you asked him to meet with me about transferring your shares in our joint ventures. Said you were having trouble keeping track of business details and wanted him to handle things going forward." Bill and I had been partners in 3 major warehouse facilities for 15 years. We had built a solid, profitable relationship based on trust and mutual respect. He actually brought documents, Floyd. Transfer papers that would have given him controlling interest in our partnership. When I refused to sign anything without talking to you first, he got angry. Started saying you weren't competent to make business decisions anymore, and that the family was trying to protect your interests. I felt like someone had punched me in the chest. My own son, trying to steal my life's work, by claiming I was mentally incompetent. This wasn't a desperate decision made in a moment of weakness. This was a calculated long-term plan to strip me of everything I had built. Bill, I want you to know that I never authorized Derek to speak for me about anything business-related. I'm completely mentally competent, and I'll be scheduling an independent psychological evaluation to document that fact. I figured as much, Floyd. You've always been sharp as a tack, but I wanted you to know what Derek was attempting. There's something else, though. He mentioned that you've been living with them because you lost your house in some kind of financial trouble. Is that true?" "No, Bill. I own the house where I'm staying. I own all my properties outright. I moved in with Derek and his family after Martha died because I wanted to be closer to my grandson. I'm starting to realize that was a mistake. That evening, I received a text message from Derek. Dad, sorry it had to come to this, but Jessica's right. You need professional care. We're doing what's best for Tommy's future. Don't fight us on this." I stared at that message for a long time. Tommy's future. They were using my grandson as justification for stealing from me. The child I loved more than my own life was being used as a weapon against me. I realized then that Derek and Jessica weren't just planning to take my money. They were planning to rewrite history, making themselves the heroes who saved a confused old man from his own poor decisions. They would tell Tommy that Grandpa Floyd had lost everything, and they had generously taken him in. My grandson would grow up believing his grandfather was a failure who needed their charity. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Martha, about how she had always believed people were fundamentally good until proven otherwise. She would have been heartbroken to see what Derek had become, but she also would have expected me to fight for what we built together. Martha never backed down from anything in her life. She wouldn't want me to start now. Saturday arrived with Derek's weekend barbecue, an event I had attended every month since moving in with them. I decided to go, not as the confused old man they expected, but as an observer gathering evidence of their deception. Jessica had outdone herself with decorations and catering, expensive food, premium drinks, hired servers, all funded by money she believed belonged to her now. She moved through the crowd of neighbors and friends like a queen holding court, her voice carrying across the backyard as she spun her elaborate stories. Yes, the warehouse business has been in Floyd's family for generations, she told the Wilson family from down the street. When I married Derek, I inherited the responsibility of modernizing the operations. It's been challenging, but we're finally bringing the company into the 21st century. I stood near the refreshment table, watching my daughter-in-law claim credit for 40 years of my hard work. She gestured grandly toward the house, explaining to guests how she and Derek had inherited this property and were considering renovations. Derek was no better. When his college friend Marcus asked about my background, Derek introduced me as my dad, who used to work in shipping. Used to work. As if I was a retired employee rather than the founder and owner of a multi-million-dollar business. Dad's been living with us since Mom died, Derek explained to Marcus. It's been an adjustment, but we're managing. Jessica's been incredible, really stepping up to help take care of him. The condescension in his voice made my jaw clench. Take care of me. I was 68 years old and in excellent health, both physical and mental, but Derek spoke about me like I was an invalid. Throughout the afternoon, Jessica made increasingly bold statements designed to humiliate me in front of the guests. She staged little incidents, asking me loudly if I remembered where I put my reading glasses, then finding them on my head and making a show of helping me. She brought me a plate of food, announcing to everyone nearby that she was making sure Floyd eats properly because he sometimes forgets meals. The most painful moment came when 8-year-old Tommy approached me while I sat alone on the porch steps. My grandson climbed up beside me, his small hand touching my arm. Grandpa Floyd, why do you look so sad today? I looked down into his innocent face, this beautiful child who represented the best parts of Derek and the best parts of Martha's legacy. How could I explain that his parents were lying to everyone about me? How could I burden him with adult problems? I'm just thinking about some important decisions I need to make, buddy. Are you thinking about Grandma Martha? Mom says you miss her a lot and that's why you get confused sometimes. My heart broke. They were already poisoning my grandson's mind against me, planting seeds of doubt about my mental capacity. In Tommy's young understanding, grief meant confusion, and confusion meant Grandpa Floyd couldn't be trusted. I do miss Grandma Martha very much, I said carefully. But I'm not confused, Tommy. I'm just sad sometimes, and that's okay. Adults are allowed to feel sad. As the afternoon wound down, I excused myself to use the bathroom inside the house. Walking through the hallway, I overheard Jessica talking on her phone in the kitchen, her voice sharp and businesslike. Yes, Monday morning is perfect for the evaluation. Dr. Peterson comes highly recommended for these types of assessments. We need documentation that Floyd is mentally incompetent before he tries to interfere with the property transfers. I froze outside the kitchen door. Derek already filed the preliminary paperwork for conservatorship. Once we have the psychiatric evaluation confirming cognitive decline, the court will grant us full legal authority over Floyd's affairs. He won't be able to fight us on anything. My blood ran cold. They weren't just planning to steal my assets. They were planning to have me declared mentally incompetent so I couldn't legally defend myself. Once they gained conservatorship, they would control everything. My money, my property, my medical decisions, even where I lived. The assisted living facility has an opening next month. It's not the nicest place, but it's what we can afford from Floyd's Social Security. The good news is, once he's committed, we won't have to worry about him interfering with our plans. I heard Derek's voice join the conversation. Dad won't fight us anyway. He never fights for anything. He'll just accept whatever we tell him, and be grateful we're handling the details. That last comment hit me like a physical blow. Derek believed I was too weak, too passive, too broken by grief to defend myself. He thought losing Martha had made me powerless. As I quietly left the party, Tommy ran up to give me a goodbye hug. I knelt down and held him tight, whispering, "Grandpa loves you very much, Tommy. Remember that, okay?" Something in my voice must have concerned him because he pulled back to look at my face. "Are you okay, Grandpa Floyd?" "I'm going to be just fine, buddy. Don't worry about me." But as I drove away from that house, I knew everything was about to change. Derek and Jessica had made a critical error in their planning. They assumed I would remain passive, that I would accept their version of reality and quietly disappear into whatever institution they chose for me. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Sunday morning, I woke up with a clear purpose. If Derek and Jessica wanted to play legal games, I would show them how those games were properly played. I spent the day making discreet phone calls to my network of business contacts, lawyers, and financial advisors. My first call was to James Richardson, my attorney for 23 years. James had handled everything from my business incorporations to Martha's will. He was shocked when I explained what Derek and Jessica were attempting. Floyd, this is elder abuse. Financial exploitation combined with attempted false imprisonment. What they're planning isn't just morally wrong, it's criminal. James reviewed the forged documents Jessica had shown me. These transfer papers are worthless. They would need your actual signature and notarization to have any legal standing. But the fact that they're presenting fraudulent documents as legitimate is serious fraud. Next, I called my accountant, Patricia Williams. She confirmed that Jessica had been calling regularly, claiming I had given her authority to manage my finances. I never provided any information, Floyd. But Jessica was very persistent, saying you were becoming forgetful about business matters, and the family was trying to help. I told her she needed your written authorization and your signature on file before I could discuss anything. Patricia, I want you to know that I've never authorized anyone to speak for me about my finances. I want you to document every contact Jessica or Derek has made, with dates and details of what they requested. Already done, Floyd. I've been keeping detailed notes because something felt off about their requests. My third call was to Dr. Margaret Chen, a neuropsychologist I knew through Martha's cancer treatment. Dr. Chen had administered cognitive assessments to Martha during her chemotherapy to monitor for any treatment-related mental effects. I'd like to schedule a comprehensive cognitive evaluation for myself, Dr. Chen. I need official documentation of my mental competency. Of course, Floyd. May I ask what prompted this request? Family members are questioning my mental capacity, and I want independent verification that I'm fully competent to manage my own affairs. By Sunday afternoon, I had discovered the true scope of Derek and Jessica's deception. My private investigator friend, Tom Bradley, had spent 2 hours researching their activities. Floyd, you're not going to like what I found. Jessica has been using your warehouse address to secure personal loans for her boutique business. She's forged your signature on documents that make you personally liable for $75,000 in her business debts. The betrayal kept getting worse. What else, Tom? Derek quit his job at the insurance company 3 weeks ago, told his supervisor he was taking over the family business and wouldn't need employment anymore. He's been telling friends and coworkers that you're leaving him a substantial inheritance and he plans to live off the business income. They're spending money they don't have, based on assets they don't own. It gets worse, Floyd. Jessica made inquiries with 3 different real estate agents about selling your warehouse properties. She represented herself as your business manager and claimed you were ready to liquidate assets for retirement. One agent showed her comparable sales data, and she's been bragging to friends about the millions she'll have access to soon. That evening, I received an official notice in the mail. Derek had petitioned the court for emergency conservatorship over my affairs, claiming I was mentally unfit to manage my finances. The hearing was scheduled for Friday morning. According to the petition, Derek claimed I had been making erratic financial decisions, forgetting important business obligations, and living in denial about my declining capabilities. The document painted me as a confused old man who needed protection from his own poor judgment. Reading those lies, typed on official legal letterhead and filed in court records, filled me with a rage I hadn't felt since Martha's diagnosis. They weren't just stealing from me privately. They were creating a public record that would follow me forever, claiming I was mentally incompetent. I called James Richardson immediately. James, they've filed for emergency conservatorship. Friday morning hearing. Floyd, we need to move fast. Emergency conservatorship can be granted with minimal evidence if the petitioner claims immediate danger. Once it's in place, even temporarily, it becomes much harder to reverse. What do we need to do? We fight back with everything we have. I'm filing counter motions first thing Monday morning. We'll need your medical records, the cognitive evaluation from Dr. Chen, character witnesses from business associates, and evidence of their fraud. This is war, Floyd. War. That's exactly what it was. Derek and Jessica had declared war on me, betting I was too old and too broken to fight back effectively. They had spent months planning their attack, assuming I would never discover their plot until it was too late to stop them. They were about to learn that 40 years in business had taught me a few things about strategic planning and decisive action. Martha used to say I was too nice for my own good, always giving people the benefit of the doubt. But she also knew that when I finally decided to fight for something, I fought to win. Monday morning arrived, with Jessica's 48-hour deadline hanging over me. I had exactly 2 days before her eviction demand and 4 days before the conservatorship hearing. Time for careful planning was over. Now it was time for decisive action. I met with James Richardson at 7 in the morning in his downtown office. We spent 3 hours preparing documentation to prove my mental competency and expose Derek and Jessica's fraud. Floyd, your cognitive evaluation with Dr. Chen is scheduled for tomorrow. She'll provide a comprehensive assessment that will destroy any claims about mental decline. But we need more than that. We need to show the court that this conservatorship petition is malicious and motivated by greed. James had prepared a stack of affidavits from my business partners, employees, and financial advisors. Each document testified to my mental sharpness, my active involvement in business decisions, and my complete competency in managing complex financial affairs. Bill Martinez provided a particularly strong statement. I have worked closely with Floyd Thompson for 15 years. He demonstrates exceptional business judgment, attention to detail, and strategic thinking. Any suggestion that he is mentally incompetent is not only false but absurd. His son Derek recently approached me with fraudulent claims about Floyd's mental state in an apparent attempt to gain control of shared business assets. While James prepared our legal defense, I was preparing something else entirely. I called my commercial real estate agent, Carol Stevens, and scheduled an emergency meeting. Carol, I need to put all my properties on the market immediately, both the warehouse complex and the family home. Floyd, that's a significant decision. Are you sure you want to sell everything at once? We could probably get better prices with staggered sales over several months. Time is more important than maximum profit right now, Carol. I need these properties sold and closed within 2 weeks if possible. The warehouse complex alone was worth $2.3 million due to its prime location and the recent boom in e-commerce distribution needs. The house was worth $850,000 in the current market. Even with quick sale pricing, I was looking at over $3 million in liquid assets. I have buyers who've been interested in your warehouse properties for months, Floyd. If you're serious about quick closure, I can have offers by tomorrow afternoon. While Carol worked on the property sales, I spent Monday afternoon with my financial advisor, Margaret Walsh, restructuring my liquid assets to protect them from any potential conservatorship claims. Margaret, I want to establish an irrevocable trust immediately, with Tommy as the sole beneficiary and independent trustees managing the assets until he reaches 25. Floyd, that's a significant move. Once assets are placed in an irrevocable trust, you won't have direct access to them. That's exactly what I want. If Derek and Jessica somehow manage to get conservatorship despite our evidence, they won't be able to touch the trust assets. Tommy will be protected regardless of what happens to me. Margaret understood the urgency. We can have the trust documents ready by Wednesday. What about your immediate living expenses and legal costs? I'll retain enough liquid assets to maintain my independence, but the bulk of everything goes into the trust for Tommy's future. Tuesday brought Dr. Chen's cognitive evaluation, 3 hours of comprehensive testing that covered memory, reasoning, decision-making capacity, and mental status. Dr. Chen was thorough and professional, clearly documenting my complete mental competency. Floyd, your cognitive function is excellent across all measured domains. Your scores are well above average for your age group, and there's absolutely no evidence of any mental decline or impairment. Dr. Chen, I need your report to be extremely detailed and definitive. People are trying to claim I'm mentally incompetent for financial reasons. I understand completely. My report will make it clear that any claims about your mental incompetency are not supported by clinical evidence. You demonstrate superior cognitive function and decision-making capacity. Tuesday afternoon brought disturbing news from my private investigator. Derek and Jessica's spending had accelerated dramatically over the past month. Floyd, they've purchased a luxury SUV for $48,000, putting the loan in Derek's name but listing your address as collateral. Jessica bought jewelry worth $12,000, telling the store owner she was celebrating a family business acquisition. They've also put a down payment on a vacation condo in Scottsdale, claiming they're expanding their real estate portfolio with family money. The evidence of their premature celebration was overwhelming. They had spent tens of thousands of dollars based on money they believed they would steal from me. Derek had even given notice at his apartment, planning to move into a larger house once they liquidated my assets. Wednesday morning brought the call I had been expecting. Derek called, his voice panicked and desperate. "Dad, we need to talk. There's been a misunderstanding about the house and the business. Jessica says you've been acting strange, and we're worried about you." I let the call go to voicemail, but I listened to his message. For the first time since this ordeal began, Derek sounded uncertain. Something had spooked them, probably the changed locks at the warehouse, or questions from their lawyer about the validity of their claims. Wednesday afternoon, Carol Stevens called with excellent news about the property sales. "Floyd, I have solid offers on both properties. The warehouse has multiple bidders, and we can close in 8 days if you approve the contracts. The house has a cash buyer who can close in 5 days. Approved. Draw up the contracts and schedule the closings." That evening, I packed a small suitcase and checked into a hotel across town. I left a simple note on the kitchen table. "Gone fishing for a few days. Don't worry about me." I wasn't really going fishing, of course. But Derek and Jessica would panic when they realized I had disappeared just before their planned conservatorship hearing. They would wonder if I had discovered their plot, if I was seeking legal help, or if I was simply confused and wandering around somewhere. The uncertainty would drive them crazy. And uncertainty makes people make mistakes. From my hotel room, I reviewed the timeline. Tomorrow was Thursday. The conservatorship hearing was Friday morning. Both properties would close early next week. Jessica's 48-hour eviction deadline had already passed, but she couldn't enforce an eviction notice for a house she didn't own. Everything was falling into place. Derek and Jessica had built their entire plan on the assumption that I was weak, passive, and unaware of their scheming. They were about to discover how wrong they were about all three things. Thursday morning, I sat in my hotel room with my cell phone, a cup of coffee, and a list of 3 phone numbers. These 3 calls would end Derek and Jessica's deception permanently, and demonstrate that underestimating a determined old man was a serious mistake. The first call was to Carol Stevens, my real estate agent. "Carol, I'm ready to finalize everything. Accept all offers and expedite the closings. Floyd, the warehouse buyers are offering $2.4 million for a 3-day close. That's actually above your asking price because they want to secure the property quickly. The house buyer is offering $800,000 cash with closing scheduled for tomorrow afternoon. Perfect. I want both sales completed before Friday morning. May I ask about the urgency, Floyd? This timeline is extremely aggressive, even for motivated sellers. Let's just say I have family members who need to learn some important lessons about ownership and respect." The second call was to James Richardson, my attorney. "James, I want you to file criminal charges against Jessica for fraud and forgery this morning. I also want Derek removed immediately from any business-related roles or access. Floyd, I've prepared all the documentation. Jessica's forged signatures on the loan documents constitute felony fraud. The evidence is overwhelming. Do you want to proceed with pressing charges?" "Absolutely. I also want restraining orders preventing both Derek and Jessica from accessing any of my properties or interfering with my business operations." "Consider it done. The papers will be served this afternoon." My third call was to Mitchell Security Services, the company that managed access control for my warehouse facilities. "This is Floyd Thompson. I need all access codes and keys changed immediately for both my warehouse complex and the family residence on Maple Street." "Mr. Thompson, we can have technicians there within 2 hours. Should we remove any specific individuals from the authorized access list?" "Yes. Remove Derek Thompson and Jessica Thompson from all access privileges. Install temporary security monitoring to prevent unauthorized entry attempts." "Understood, sir. We'll also provide security patrol services if you anticipate any problems." "That would be wise." Within 3 hours, my 3 phone calls had accomplished what Derek and Jessica thought was impossible. Both properties were sold, with immediate closing dates. Jessica faced felony fraud charges, with evidence that would guarantee conviction. Derek and Jessica were locked out of all properties they had claimed to own. At 2:30 in the afternoon, Derek called my hotel room. I answered on the fourth ring. "Dad, where are you?" "We went to the warehouse, and the locks are changed. There are security guards who say we're not authorized to be there." "What's happening?" "Hello, Derek. I understand you've been having some difficulties accessing properties that don't belong to you. Dad, you're scaring us. Jessica is crying, and we don't understand what's going on. Can you come home so we can talk about this?" "I am home, Derek. This hotel room is my home now. The house you thought you inherited was sold this afternoon. The warehouse you thought you owned was sold this morning." Silence on the other end of the line. "Dad, that's impossible. You can't sell family property without discussing it with us. We have legal rights." "Actually, Derek, you have no legal rights to my property whatsoever. Everything was in my name only, just as it's been for 40 years. I could sell, donate, or burn down every asset I own without asking anyone's permission. But the conservatorship hearing is tomorrow. The judge will stop you from making these kinds of decisions." "The conservatorship hearing is canceled, Derek. It's difficult to claim someone is mentally incompetent when they're successfully managing complex real estate transactions and exposing criminal fraud schemes." Another long silence. "Dad, please. Jessica made a mistake with those loan documents, but she was just trying to help with the business. We can work this out. We're family." "Derek, Jessica didn't make a mistake. She committed deliberate fraud by forging my signature on legal documents. She's facing felony charges that could result in prison time. As for being family, you lost the right to use that word when you tried to have me declared mentally incompetent so you could steal everything Martha and I built together." I heard Derek's voice break. "Dad, I'm sorry. I was scared about Tommy's future, about providing for my family. Jessica convinced me that you weren't thinking clearly after Mom died, and I believed her. I was wrong." "Derek, you didn't just believe Jessica's lies. You helped create them. You called my business partners and told them I had dementia. You quit your job expecting to live off money you planned to steal from me. You used my grandson as justification for destroying my reputation and independence. I know, Dad. I know I messed up terribly. But we can fix this, can't we? You're my father, and I love you." For a moment, hearing the pain in Derek's voice, I almost wavered. This was my son, the boy I had taught to throw a baseball and helped with homework, and walked to his first day of school. But then I remembered Jessica's cruel smirk when she called me a broke old man. I remembered Derek telling his friend I used to work in shipping. I remembered them planning to put me in a substandard nursing home, while they spent millions of dollars they thought belonged to them. Derek, love isn't a word you use to manipulate people. Love is what your mother and I had when we worked 16-hour days to build something real. Love is putting family first, even when it's difficult. What you and Jessica showed me wasn't love. It was greed, disguised as concern. So what happens now, Dad? What about Tommy? What about our family? Tommy will be fine, Derek. Better than fine. The money from the property sales is going into an educational trust that will ensure your son has every opportunity you tried to steal from him. As for our family, that depends entirely on whether you're capable of learning from this experience. I hung up the phone and sat quietly in my hotel room, watching the afternoon sun stream through the windows. 3 phone calls had dismantled months of Derek and Jessica's careful planning. More importantly, those calls had restored my dignity and protected my grandson's future. There was still one more day of this ordeal to endure. Tomorrow would bring the aftermath of their collapse scheme and the beginning of whatever relationship Derek and I might salvage from this wreckage. Friday morning, I returned to the house one final time to collect my personal belongings before the new owners took possession. Derek and Jessica were waiting in the driveway, both looking devastated and desperate. Jessica's designer confidence had completely crumbled. She stood beside Derek's car, no longer the smirking woman who had called me a broke old man just 5 days earlier. Her face was puffy from crying, her expensive clothes wrinkled, her carefully styled hair disheveled. "Floyd, please," she said as I walked toward the front door. "I know what I said was horrible. I was wrong, and I'm sorry. I didn't mean those things about you being broke or useless. I was just stressed about money. and I said things I shouldn't have. I looked at her calmly. Jessica, you weren't stressed when you forged my signature on loan documents. You weren't stressed when you told people you inherited my business. You weren't stressed when you planned to have me declared mentally incompetent and locked away in a nursing home. Those were deliberate, calculated decisions made over many months. Derek stepped forward, his shoulders sagging with defeat. Dad, I take full responsibility for everything that happened. Jessica was following my lead, and I convinced her that we were doing what was best for everyone, including you. Derek, that's not true, and we both know it. Jessica was the mastermind behind this scheme. You went along with it because you thought it would be easy money, but she was the one pushing for more aggressive action. I unlocked the front door and walked into the house that had been my home for 2 years. Most of my belongings were already packed, but I needed to collect Martha's jewelry and our wedding photos. These weren't valuable in monetary terms, but they were irreplaceable to me. Derek followed me inside, his voice pleading. Dad, what about the warehouse business? What about everything you built? You're just going to sell it all and walk away? The warehouse sold for $2.4 million, Derek. The house sold for $850,000. Combined with my other investments, that's over $3.5 million. Jessica gasped audibly. She had never understood the true scope of my financial assets. All of that money is going into an irrevocable educational trust for Tommy, managed by independent trustees until he reaches 25 years old. Your son will have opportunities for the finest education available, including graduate school if he chooses. He'll never have to worry about student loans or educational expenses. But what about us? Derek asked desperately. What about our future? We have bills, a mortgage, car payments. I quit my job expecting to help run the family business. Derek, you quit your job expecting to steal the family business. There's a significant difference. As for your bills and mortgage, those are your responsibility. You're a capable adult who can find employment and support his family through honest work. I sat down in Martha's favorite chair for the last time, looking at my son and daughter-in-law. However, I'm not a cruel man, despite what you tried to do to me. Derek, I will help you find legitimate employment in the logistics industry. I have contacts who might be willing to hire someone with your background, assuming you can demonstrate that you've learned from this experience. Derek's eyes filled with tears. You'd do that for me? After everything I put you through? I'd do that for Tommy, Derek. Your son shouldn't suffer because his parents made terrible decisions. But understand this clearly. My help comes with conditions. You must take full responsibility for your actions. You must make honest efforts to rebuild your career through legitimate work. And you must never, ever attempt to manipulate or take advantage of me again. Jessica spoke up, her voice small and frightened. What about the criminal charges? Am I going to prison? That depends on you, Jessica. The fraud you committed was serious, and the evidence against you is overwhelming. However, if you make full restitution for the money you stole, cooperate completely with the investigation, and demonstrate genuine remorse through community service, my attorney might be willing to negotiate a plea agreement that avoids prison time. But I don't have the money to make restitution. How can I pay back $75,000? That's your problem to solve, Jessica. Get a job. Sell your luxury items. Work with your creditors. Learn what it means to be responsible for your own debts, instead of stealing from elderly family members. Over the next hour, I finished packing my belongings, while Derek and Jessica sat quietly in the living room. The silence felt heavy, but necessary. They needed time to process the complete collapse of their scheme and the reality of their situation. Finally, Derek spoke up. Dad, I want you to know that I never stopped loving you. I know my actions don't show it, but I was just scared about providing for Tommy, and I made terrible choices because I thought there was an easy solution. Derek, fear doesn't excuse betrayal. Wanting to provide for your family is admirable, but trying to steal from your father to accomplish that goal is despicable. The difference between good people and bad people isn't that good people never face difficult situations. It's that good people find honorable solutions to their problems. As I prepared to leave the house for the final time, 8-year-old Tommy arrived home from school. Derek had apparently called the school to have him picked up early. My grandson ran to me with his usual enthusiasm, unaware of the adult drama that had been unfolding around him. Grandpa Floyd, Dad said you're moving to a new house. Can I come visit you there? I knelt down to Tommy's eye level. This beautiful boy, who represented hope and innocence in the middle of so much ugliness. Of course you can visit me, buddy. I'm moving to a nice place where there are other people my age, and there's a big community room where we can play games together. Why are Mom and Dad looking so sad? I glanced at Derek and Jessica, both watching our interaction with anxious expressions. Sometimes adults make mistakes that have consequences, Tommy. Your parents are learning some important lessons about making better choices. Are you mad at them, Grandpa Floyd? I was hurt by some things they did, but I'm not mad anymore. Sometimes people we love disappoint us, but that doesn't mean we stop loving them. We just have to be smarter about protecting ourselves. Tommy hugged me tightly. I love you, Grandpa Floyd. I hope your new house is really nice. I love you too, Tommy. More than you'll ever know. 6 months later, I was settled into my new life at Sunset Manor, a high-quality retirement community that felt more like a resort than an institution. I had my own apartment, made new friends, and joined the investment club where I helped other residents manage their portfolios. Derek found a job with a regional shipping company, starting at an entry-level position but working his way up through demonstrated competence and reliability. We had dinner together once a month, slowly rebuilding trust through honest conversation and consistent behavior. It would take years to fully repair our relationship, but we were making progress. Jessica completed 200 hours of community service working with elderly residents at a nursing home, an experience that gave her genuine insight into the vulnerability and dignity of older adults. She got a full-time job in retail management and was slowly paying restitution for her fraudulent activities. More importantly, she seemed to understand now that respect and kindness aren't optional in family relationships. Tommy visited me every other weekend, and I had the joy of watching him grow and learn without the stress of family conflict. His educational trust was growing steadily, ensuring he would have opportunities his parents never could have provided through their original scheme. The most important thing I learned from this experience was that grief had made me vulnerable, but it hadn't made me weak. Losing Martha was the most devastating experience of my life, but it also taught me what really mattered: integrity, dignity, and the courage to protect what you value most. For 40 years, Martha and I built something real through honest work and mutual respect. Derek and Jessica tried to steal that legacy through lies and manipulation. By fighting back, I didn't just protect my financial assets, I protected the meaning of everything Martha and I had accomplished together. Sometimes, kindness is mistaken for weakness, but true strength isn't about avoiding conflict. True strength is knowing when to fight for what matters, and having the courage to follow through, even when it costs you relationships you thought were precious. I learned that family isn't defined by blood alone, but by respect, trust, and genuine care for each other's well-being. Derek and Jessica had to earn back their place in my life through changed behavior, not just apologies and promises. Most importantly, I learned that it's never too late to stand up for yourself. At 68 years old, facing criminal fraud and attempted financial exploitation, I could have accepted defeat and allowed myself to be victimized. Instead, I chose to fight back strategically and decisively. That choice didn't just save my assets, it saved my dignity, my independence, and my grandson's future. It also gave Derek and Jessica the opportunity to learn from their mistakes and become better people. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to enable destructive behavior, even when that behavior comes from family members. Now I wake up each morning in my comfortable apartment, surrounded by people who treat me with genuine respect and friendship. I have purpose, independence, and the satisfaction of knowing I protected what Martha and I built together. Tommy will grow up with opportunities we could only dream of, funded by money that was earned honestly and preserved through principled action. Derek calls me twice a week now, and our conversations are real and honest. He's learning that respect is earned through consistent good choices, not inherited through family connections. Jessica is slowly learning the same lesson. They both have a long way to go, but they're making genuine progress. Looking back on those terrible 5 days when everything seemed to be falling apart, I'm grateful for the experience. It forced me to remember who I really was underneath the grief and isolation. It reminded me that Martha would have expected me to fight for our legacy, not surrender it to people who hadn't earned it. That experience also taught me something crucial about aging with dignity. Getting older doesn't mean becoming powerless. Experience, wisdom, and financial resources can be powerful tools for protecting yourself and the people you love, but only if you have the courage to use them when necessary. I want to ask you something important as we finish this story together. Have you ever faced a situation where someone underestimated you because of your age, your quiet nature, or your circumstances? How did you handle it? Did you stand up for yourself? Or did you let it pass? The truth is, we all face moments when we must choose between keeping peace and protecting our dignity. I'd love to hear about your experiences in the comments below. Sometimes the most important lessons come from hearing how others handled similar challenges. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and share it with someone who might need to hear it. We all know people who've been taken advantage of or underestimated, and sometimes hearing about someone else's courage can inspire us to find our own. And if you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to hear more real-life experiences about standing up for what's right, even when it's difficult. We all have stories of struggle, betrayal, and ultimate triumph, and sharing them helps us support each other through life's challenges. Thank you for taking this journey with me today. I hope you remember that it's never too late to fight for your dignity, protect what you've earned, and demand the respect you deserve. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give your family is refusing to let them destroy themselves through dishonesty and greed. May you always have the wisdom to see clearly, the courage to act decisively, and the strength to protect what matters most.